In today's episode, I will be talking to Ryan Narus about what is easy isn't profitable. Listen in to hear the rest of our conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Ryan Narus. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, how are you?
I am really good, and you?
I am excited to be here.
Well, that's a really good start. You have a bit of an interesting story. Could you share that with us?
Yes, so I am from the United States, and what culturally we do here, what we force feed our children here is if you work really hard in school, you'll go to a good university, and then you'll get a good job after that, and you stay at that job and you work hard and you'll retire well and you'll live a great life. And it turns out, Judith, that was a lie.
Yeah.
So I woke up one day after studying really hard and working really hard and realizing that not only was there no job waiting for me when I graduated from university, but also when I eventually found a job, I felt stuck and unfulfilled. And so I was tired of it. I went out and I picked up a bunch of books and I talked to a bunch of people. And I didn't let the fact that I had no money and no experience and no network get in my way. And I went out and I found what I was meant to be when I grow up. And now 4 years and change into it, I am a self-employed entrepreneur and I absolutely love what I do.
Well, that sounds good. How did you find out then what you're supposed to be?
Years of asking the question, who am I?
Uh-huh.
So I own mobile home parks, which are affordable housing catered to the working class in the United States of America. And I own 10 properties. The purchase price was over 20 million USD, all from nothing. I actually had more student loan debt than I had cash to even start my business. So I had to make some pretty major sacrifices. But basically, what I did over the course of a really, really long time was I looked at over 100 businesses. I spoke to everybody. I spoke to custodians all the way up to CEOs and everybody in between. And I just really honed down and asked really difficult questions of myself to ultimately determine what is going to give me meaning and purpose and happiness. Because no matter what path you choose in life, there are going to be hurdles and there are going to be painful times. And if you don't truly love what you do, if it doesn't fit like a glove, you will quit. There's plenty of stuff I've started in my life that I've eventually quit. And it's always because if your passion doesn't meet your career expectations or where you're going with your career, you'll eventually get stuck or you'll grow to hate it. So I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what I was good at, what I enjoyed doing, and what opportunity was out there in the world. And it literally took me years. I've even started a couple businesses that just didn't go anywhere because my heart wasn't in it. So yeah, it took a long time and was really tough sometimes, asking myself questions that I didn't want to answer.
Yeah, I can imagine so. I'm curious, did you ask yourself those questions whilst you were doing other stuff, or did you do nothing until you'd answer those questions?
I am the type of person that can't sit still. So I was always doing something. So yeah, I'll give you a good for example. So I graduated from a university called Wake Forest in North Carolina. And I was a psychology major and a statistics minor, and I thought I wanted to be a salesperson. And so I graduated in 2009, which was a terrible time to graduate because no one was hiring. And I ended up selling cars. And in that process, I discovered I loved selling. But then I also discovered there was a lot I wasn't passionate about. And when you dump hours and hours and hours of your life into something and you drink Kool-Aid, so to speak, at the job where if you work hard and you're smart and you sacrifice, you'll be rewarded with promotions, and you drink the Kool-Aid that your colleagues kind of force feed you, it can be really hard to look at that and then not be able to avoid a sunk cost, right? So you spend all this money on training and all this time only for you to start over and go into a completely different career. So yeah, there was a lot of times where I had to stare down the barrel of what seemed like at the time a lot of wasted time and money and sacrifice. But in retrospect, doing those jobs taught me lessons and built skills that ultimately I use every day now. So I think they say this: your 20s are about learning, and your 30s are about earning. And I agree wholeheartedly with that because I never would have thought going to work at a car dealership, which you don't need a college degree, you don't even need to finish high school in a lot of cases. Something that as a college graduate, I might look at and go, I'm better than that. I don't need to do that. That actually positioned me so much better because I learned how to persuade and negotiate and do customer service. So yeah, there's a lot of times where you'll be in something and you feel like you're going nowhere and you don't know that you actually were going somewhere until years later when you look back and go, wow, I learned a lot and I met a lot of people.
Yeah, I wonder whether you confused your friends and family in terms of your reflection, constantly asking yourself, who am I and what do I care about?
Yes, and the fascinating thing was, so you don't get to pick your family, but you do get to pick your friends. For better or for worse, you're stuck with your family, you're not stuck with your friends. And the fascinating thing was, as my friend group kind of rotated over the years, I found myself creating habits and busting habits that I normally wouldn't have otherwise done. So, for example, my first couple years selling cars, I hung out with folks who were they were going to take over the world. They were just super motivated. They wanted to work all the time. And I found myself spending absurd amount of hours at the car dealership. And then as those friends migrated to bigger and better things, I had less ambitious friends fill that void. And then I found myself mirroring their behavior. So yes, I agree with you. You have to, it is amazing how much influence the folks you choose to spend time with have over your work habits. So I would definitely agree with you there. Now, family is what family is, but beyond them, I can't remember who says it, or maybe it's everybody, but they say you are a product of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. And that is so true.
Yes, exactly. It's quite funny because I was just about to say that, and I think he's totally right. Which is why you have to pick the people very, very carefully. So, how did you manage to fund your business then? Because that's a lot. What did you say it was? So many million property?
20 million in acquisition. We do between 65 and 75% loan to value. So we've raised well over $5 million with this beautiful thing called OPM, which stands for Other People's Money.
So how did you do that? Because you're quite young, so I'm fascinated.
I am young, and I went and got my graduate degree in business. So I got my MBA from Wake Forest University as well. And I read as much as I could and I networked as much as I could. And when I went to pitch investors, I could say, hey, graduate degree from a good school. Here's my experience. Here's my business plan. I've spent countless hours reading and researching, and I'm ready to go. And here's a great opportunity to come invest with me. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how good your pitch is or what school you went to or how many times you failed in your life. It takes years to build trust. So we met, gosh, now hundreds of people over the years to try to figure out who was going to invest with us. And the funny thing of it is, the people who ended up investing with us were overwhelmingly folks we had known for years.
Yes.
In a very handful of cases, we've got folks who we'd known for less than a year to invest, or maybe a little over a year, but really less than a year to invest with us. But for the most part, it's trust is built over years, and you can't just pick up the phone and dial for dollars, so to speak, and just one phone call and boom, all of a sudden you have someone $50,000, $100,000. It took a long, long time. And now that I have a bit of a track record, so I own we've bought 10 properties. Now I can point to a lot of things. I have my podcast and my videos and my blog. Now I can point to a lot of things, and people come out of the woodwork to invest with me, which is great. But if you're just starting out and you're listening to this, don't get discouraged if you go to 100 people and only 5 or less actually express real interest, because it takes years to build trust. And a lot of times folks will look at you as really risky because you've never done it. So it's really hard, and it's really gut wrenching, because most times people won't call you back. And then a lot of times people will hang up on you and be very rude to you. And you have to have that thick skin to keep picking up the phone and keep trying.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that must be like, having hundreds of people that you speak to and only a small amount say yes. Yeah. So for the people out there who's listening, what would you say they should do to ensure that they keep going whilst they're building trust? Because there must have been a period of time then when there just wasn't enough money, or you wasn't sure, you could continue.
Oh, all the time. It's it's really discouraging. I remember one time specifically that my business partner called me. His name is Ian. He called me while I was about to board a train to go to my corporate job. So I've been at it for 4 years and change, but only for full time for a little over 2 years. So I was in school for the first year. I was working for the second year, and my business partner was working for the first, and then he quit and went full time in our industry and didn't make any money for about 6 months. It was less than $5,000 for the better part of a year. So he basically didn't pay himself anything. We talk about a major sacrifice. He actually moved into my old bedroom, with my parents, which is crazy. But I remember he called me while I was about to board a train, and he basically was having a bit of a moment where he went, we've bought one property because we didn't have any money. We only owned 3% of the deal. So there wasn't any money coming in, and we cashed out a finder's fee and kept a sliver of the finder's fee in the deal. So we'd have some liquid cash to invest in more properties, and it just wasn't happening. We just couldn't find anything. And he called me, and I said, look, this is not going to be easy, but this is where the truly successful people decide, you know what, the odds look grim. It looks really tough, but I'm going to keep fighting every single day, and I'm not going to quit. And it turns out all he needed was that hype phone call. And he just needed to just have a moment to blow off some steam and to just be reassured by me that everything was going to be okay and that we were going to do this together. And as luck would have it, not but a couple hours later, a woman called us back and said, I'll sell you my property. And we bought our second mobile home park shortly thereafter. And that was a wonderful moment, because he was staring down the barrel of having quit his job, having not made really any money in an uncomfortable amount of time. And we kept going. And then I had a pretty similar moment not long thereafter, because basically what we did was on our third property, I quit my full-time job to pay myself pennies to go and live in a mobile home on site and pay myself the manager's salary. And it was really difficult because it was about 4 hours away from my wife and all my friends. And so every other week, Ian would be there or I would be there. And it was really tough because I would spend 60 to 80 hours a week in that office with nothing better to do but make sure that property was perfect. And then the next week I'd be home with my wife. And I just had a moment where I was talking to Ian and I was like, man, if we don't find another really couple properties, we're going to be doing this for a long time. And not that I don't really love working for myself and being a property manager. It's that realistically, I'm going to have to move my wife down here and uproot my entire life if this is not a temporary thing. So yeah, there's moments all the time where I've felt I've had to make some pretty big sacrifices. And I've had moments where either Ian or myself had to kind of talk each other off the ledge, so to speak. That's going to happen. But again, what is easy isn't profitable, right? It's the things worth fighting for in life are always the hard things, because if it was easy, everyone would do it.
That's true. But what makes you refuse to quit? Is it your maverick nature or is it something else?
If you ask my wife, she'd say I'm just stubborn. But yes, absolutely. So I am a very competitive person and I'm a very unconventional person. I believe I'm that maverick that you discussed because I realize that there's a higher purpose that I'm meant to carry out within my life. And I'm going to have to go about it unconventional ways because I'm not that smart of a person. I'd like to think I'm really hardworking, but I'm really not relative to a lot of folks I've met. And it's really hard to compete conventionally, especially in my industry when there are Wall Street people with just millions and millions of dollars that can come in and just buy whatever they want. And it's really hard to be the little guy and compete. And the only way, if you're competing against Goliath, is you have to be David. You like Niccolo Machiavelli says in The Prince, sometimes it's best not to wear other people's armor. It's not best suited for you. And that's how I look at life. What has made me not quit is, first and foremost, I know who I am at my core. And I because I know who I am and what I want in my life, and I have a very clear sense of purpose and sense of what I'm supposed to do in my life. It makes decision making really, really easy. And also it makes maverick decisions really easy, because as long as it's ethical and legal, if it's unconventional, and even if people will look at me and start to laugh because they think it's weird, hey, it's not stupid if it works. And so I totally would agree that it's a maverick mindset. But again, kudos to my wife. I am also a pretty stubborn person.
But you're stubborn because you know that what you're doing is the right thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's really different from being stubborn because you're pig-headed and you refuse to change. Because I'd imagine, I imagine if you turn around, if somebody came up to you and said, Ryan, this is, you're just being stubborn. If you do it this way, it's much better. You'd go, all right then. Do you know what I mean? If you could be convinced that the other way is the better way, then you wouldn't be stubborn.
Yeah, I think maybe rigid is a better way to define it, because I want one clear answer. And if I'm on the highway driving to downtown and there's a traffic jam and I can get off the highway and take back roads for a little bit and get back on the highway, I'm not going to be stubborn enough to go, I'm going to stick with the highway no matter if there's traffic or not. I'm going to be open to taking back roads if and only if the outcome is the same. So I'd say I'm definitely rigid, but as long as I get to the goal, and again, it's legal and ethical, yeah, I will do. I'm always open to hearing someone say, you've been doing it wrong your whole life. And to what you asked earlier, and to what I said about sunk costs, it was painful to spend 4 hard, long years, blood, sweat, and tears at the car dealership, to drop all of that and chase my entrepreneurial dream and feel like I worked really hard and had nothing much to show for it. But you have to be willing to go, that is a sunk cost. I need to drop it and go. So yes, about certain things, you need to be rigid, you need to be stubborn, but about certain things, you need to be able to go, you know what if I was doing this wrong? Because the goal here is X. And as long as I can switch my medium to travel to X, as long as you're not stubborn about that, I think you're primed for success.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that socialized mavericks do exactly that. They're very execution driven and output driven. So, they don't like to talk a lot about something. They'd rather just get on and do it. And also quite reflective, constantly checking that the direction they're going is going to lead them to not just the goals, but make sure they fulfill something in themselves. Otherwise, there's no point.
It has to be. So for me, I do a lot of charity work with my business because I realized that I was really fortunate in the family that I was born into.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a college professor, and he wasn't well-to-do, but he was definitely middle class. And he had the patience and the funding to make sure I got my education because I had learning disability growing up. And I realized at a young age when I was doing volunteer work, I was tutoring underprivileged children. I realized at a young age that there were kids like me who didn't have parents that cared. They either didn't have the patience or they didn't have the money to make sure their kids got their education. And I had that, and that was an unfair advantage that I was born with. And I realized at a young age, I really wanted to help education. And I wanted to help these kids. So I've done volunteer work with this place called Heart Math Tutoring here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'm from. And I've started a partial college scholarship for the residents in my communities. I offer to pay for college applications. And I do a bunch of other stuff like that. And the reason why isn't just because it makes me feel good and because that's what I decided I wanted to do with my life at a young age, but also because when I have really, really, really bad days, which happen no matter where you are in life, I know that what I am doing serves a greater purpose. So it helps me fight through bad days, having that sense of purpose and sense of meaning. So I would argue it is absolutely crucial, no matter where you pick in life, whatever journey you pick in life, you have to have meaning and purpose.
Yeah, and I think the difference that you're saying there is like a higher purpose. So because you can have like the purpose is I want to make loads of money. That can be a purpose that's really driven and that can drive you to like make loads of money. But if your purpose is to form a community of people that can live happily and strive and have better educational choices, then that's a higher purpose because that's really is nothing to do with you as such, is it?
Exactly.
Other people.
Exactly.
And I've been pondering that, funny enough, about whether businesses should be much clearer what their higher purpose is. And that's certainly making me sitting there thinking, yeah, I know, what I'm striving for, but maybe I personally should be clearer in stating what that is. Because again, as you said, gone.
I'm a little biased. I think it's crucial. And for my employees, I always tell them, remember, we are not in the real estate business. We are in the community building business. And together, we're going to make clean, safe communities with good people that self-police. And we're going to clean this place up. We're going to get bad people out. We're going to incentivize good people to stay put. And that way it changes them from thinking, oh, I get paid on Friday, or, oh, I'm going to get a promotion and I'm going to be sole focused on getting a promotion. And that changes their focus to what can I do today to make this community a better place? And to me, it is absolutely crucial to have a higher purpose beyond, like you said, just making loads of money or getting a promotion and working your way up to the CEO role. If you have a reason to do what you do that will be beneficial to others because you worked hard and you were there, I find in my experience, people will go the extra mile without you even having to tell them.
I agree. And a while ago, I can't remember when, might even have been a year ago, I did the Socialized Mavericks mission, like a manifesto, and it just felt like something that needed to happen. As I say, it's put that kind of stake in the ground. So this is not only what I believe in, but this is what I believe other socialised mavericks believe in. And I've got this maverick Facebook group, and I sort of said, this is what I believe. What do you think? And it was really interesting because as a community of disparate people who are very individualistic, so temporary members of teams as opposed to a fully formed team, came in and said, I like this resonates, but this needs to change, and that, and it was quite interesting, like the word like mission, because people felt like it was something that they could agree to be on a mission, but they couldn't necessarily agree as a team or a group. And I think sometimes, as you were saying, is that higher purpose needs to come out and shine in the light for you to ever stand by it.
And I don't think so. I've worked for a couple big companies, and they oftentimes espouse this idea of having meaning and purpose that's higher. But the problem is, a lot of times they'll make it really wordy, or they'll make it really confusing and vague, or even if they make it really simple, they're kind of shoving it down your throat. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's really difficult to have higher meaning and purpose across 200,000 employees if you're a Fortune 500 company. But for a small company, you can attract the right employee and keep the right employee if you have something like I do, which is, we are here to make communities better for the people and their children in them. And that's really quick, and that's really easy, and it's really meaningful. Now, albeit I've only had a handful, I've had less than 10 employees in my 4 years. So I don't have a giant sample size. So I don't want to pretend like I'm some big expert, but we have a lot of friends in our little niche real estate community that complain a lot about employees, and our complaints are really not about our employees. We're really proud of our employees. And I would like to think it's because we've given them meaning and purpose and autonomy, and we work with them. But again, I don't want to pretend like I'm some expert on people. But like I said, in my opinion, for me personally, hard days are so much easier to get through. And it's so much easier to work a little bit harder if you have that meaning and purpose. And it's simple, and it's impactful, and it's not full of buzzwords. It's something that when you put your head down to go to sleep at night, you are truly proud of.
Yes, and part of the socialized Mavericks mission, the manifesto, just a small part, says, we are working to transform the way the world works, to ensure that it's a better place tomorrow to live and work in than it is today, that the work we all do has meaning and purpose, and what we all do in our life truly matters. And it obviously goes on, but it's that kind of...
It's like that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's and it's so true. It's so true, because the work that we do now is totally different than the work we did 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So what might have worked and given you a happy life 100 years ago is totally, and even 500 years ago, is totally different today. And in this ever-changing world that we live in, we can't forget our roots, and we can't forget how our bodies are designed, right? And yeah, I love that. And I think that my generation, so I'm 32 years old as of this recording in 2019, and the problem that my generation has, especially over here in America, and you and I were talking about this when we spoke offline, Judith, about how it's insane what happens when a woman gets pregnant and has a child in the United States. I mean, my mother, she gave birth to me in the 80s and was back to work a week later, which is unheard of in Europe, right?
Yeah, it is. It's just like madness. Because if somebody said they had done that, people would look at them with complete suspicion. They were like, "There's something seriously wrong with you," and it's not. And it's not to say that we're saying that the Americans are wrong. This is just a cultural thing. Like say in Europe, if a woman goes back to work, it's like, what happened? Because there's like governmental protections to ensure that you can manage. So why are you going back to work? That's mad. Is a European perspective.
The thing of it is, in the United States, we're so work centric. That's just our culture.
Yeah.
That if you don't truly love the job that you're doing, if you're not obsessed with it, if it doesn't excite you, then having 2 weeks vacation every year and a limited amount of sick days and a limited amount of maternity and paternity leave, paid and unpaid, it will make you depressed. It is torturous. It's death by a thousand cuts. And my generation, we feel stuck. Like I mentioned during the introduction, I felt stuck. I felt unfulfilled at my job. I felt lied to that, you work hard, you get a good job and you're set. And it's just, that it's just not that way anymore. The world has changed, and especially in America, where it feels like we are so focused on the dollar that we forget about family and friends and things that truly make us happy outside of work. So therefore, if your work doesn't fulfill you and give you meaning and purpose and happiness, and that is your life, and you craft your life around your work, not your work around your life, it's really depressing. And I'll say this, from when I quit my full-time job to go full-time in my entrepreneur adventure, I have lost 20 pounds. I have done nothing different. I don't work out more now. I still eat the same crap. It's just, I lifted up a significant burden on my happiness, and my feeling stuck was released, and that alone has made me so much happier and healthier. And so I think it is important that the maverick message that you have is important for folks to know that meaning and purpose in their job, your jobs aren't just going to give that to you. You have to be and I hate to say you have to be a maverick to go and get that, but it's true, at least over in the United States. It is true.
Yeah.
Corporate jobs are looking for the most amount of work for the least amount of dollar. So you cannot expect them, number one, to have a job waiting for you when you graduate, and number two, that your job is just going to give you everything you need for in terms of your happiness. You have to go out, you have to want it, you have to go out and get it.
Yeah, and I certainly think no job, I can't think of any job in any country that will give you everything you need, because that in itself doesn't sound healthy.
Right.
But it does feel a bit, I don't know whether funny is the right word, but like in the UK, 28 days holiday is the norm, with some people, a lot of people having lots more than 28 days. And in the country going, gosh, we have almost the least amount of days of any country in Europe. This is outrageous. And it's like, and then I feel really sad here. You only got 2 weeks off. It's like, how do you survive with just 2 weeks off? And I think I think the difference probably in Europe is an understanding of balance that's required. Because like you've got France that has made it sort of unlawful to contact employees outside their working hours, for example, which is a complete change. So they've actually got email systems that switch off. So normally you got your phone and then you got an email at 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, oh, should I answer it now or should I answer it tomorrow? Well, you couldn't do that in France, but so lots of countries have seen it in a different way. And I know, like in the UK, when you're talking about pregnancy, it's that recognition that babies need breastfeeding when they're born, and that means the mother needs to do it, and they need to be at home to do it. So it's just not just the mother's right that's enshrined; it's the child. I mean, obviously, you might not breastfeed, but at least if you want to breastfeed, you have that option. You have those options. You're even allowed to breastfeed at work, and your employer has to provide a fridge for you to put your milk in.
Wow. It's very different here in the United States.
It is extremely different. You mentioned earlier that you know who you are at the core. So who are you at the core?
That's not a quick answer, but I am someone that is very vehemently pro making the world a better place, not just for myself, but for my family and for those around me. And when I'm 80 years old, looking back on my life, like everybody else, of course, I want to say I made loads of money. Of course, I want to say I've had a lot of success in my career. But really, I really want two things in my life. Number one, I want my family to go, he was just an outstanding family man. My kids and my grandkids to look at me and be like, we are better for having had Ryan in our lives. But I want the same for my community. my mom at an early age always taught me, leave a place cleaner than when you showed up. And that's how I want to look at my life. I want the world to have become better because I have lived in it. And taking that one step. So if that's the base, taking that one step further, I find the next step is finding out what you're really, truly good at. Because, and this is kind of a silly example, but I can't remember where I saw this, but it was brilliant. They were like, you can teach a duck how to swim and how to run, but you can't get mad at a duck for not running like a rabbit or flying like a hawk, right? You can teach a horse how to run, but it's going to struggle swimming. And the thing is, if you teach the rabbit how to run and be very, very good at running, it's going to be a lot happier than if you basically threw a rabbit or a horse in the water and said, all right, now you have to learn how to swim, and then get mad at it because it's not learning how to swim. You have to be keenly aware of what you are good at and what you have the potential to be very good at. And also that has to merge with what you really like. So Jim Collins' Good to Great, wonderful book, must read. He says that to find what you're truly meant to do in your life, professionally speaking, it's the intersection of 3 points: what you're passionate about, what you have a chance to be the best in the world at, and what's lucrative. And if any of those 3 things are missing, eventually you're going to quit, right? You could be passionate about it and really good at it, but if it doesn't pay any money, eventually you're going broke.
Yeah.
If you're really good at it and it pays a lot of money, but you're not passionate about it, it'll drive you nuts. You'll feel stuck and it'll drive you nuts. And if it's really lucrative and you're really good at it, but you're not the best in the world at it, eventually it'll wear on you, because we are relative creatures. And what I mean by that is we always base our success by looking at others around us. And we always say, I'm doing better than them. I'm doing worse than them. So you need to be able to have that reward. It's better to be a big fish in a small pond than a bigger fish in an even bigger pond with big fish. And it's so true. So if you can find the intersection of those 3, and I believe I found what I'm good at. I found what's lucrative. And I've picked a really small niche of real estate, and it merges with what I want to do charity-wise with my life. And it took Judith, it took years to find this. It took the better part of a decade to find this. And that's not even fair, because really I found who I was charity speaking when I was a teenager. And it takes a really, really long time. But if you're not actively looking and you don't actively know it's going to be tough, it's going to take a long time, you will find it, and it will reward you when you finally find it. But for me, yes, it took a long time to figure out who I was at my core, but it was probably the smartest thing I had ever done for my career and for my happiness.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was making me think about myself, and I found out who I was at the core very early, like 20 or so. And then I just made me wonder whether you should learn that at school, not necessarily learn what it is, but learn the question, to ask that question. Because I think about all the people in their 40s and their 50s who haven't really seriously considered who they are,
right?
Or even what they love.
Yeah.
And you think, now I know why you look. It's like when you go to work and then you're on the train or something, and then everyone looks so miserable, and then everyone's excited when it's Friday, and it's because they're not loving what they're doing.
Right.
And I can't think of anything more sadder, really, in that respect. Because you say, if you're going to spend whatever hours a week it is that you're going to spend working, and in almost probably any country, that's more time that you spend than at home. Isn't it terrible that it's something that you hate doing?
It's crazy how depressing it can be, and how we feel we're stuck in it. It's a trap. It's a trap, because you buy things that don't really make you happy. You pay up for cars and for apartments and flats and homes, and go on expensive holidays, and you spend all this money on things that don't actually bring you happiness. And my wife one day looked at me, and because a friend of mine from graduate school needed help with her small business, and my wife went to work for her part-time for free. I'm not even sure she ever made any money. She might've made a little bit of money, but it was all my wife could talk about for months. And she just was so in love with that business, and it didn't end up working out. But I remember she looked at me and she was like, I wish I could do this full time. And I went, I wish you could do this full time too. And she went, yeah, I need to make 60,000 or 70,000 or however much it doesn't make sense. And I said, I wouldn't care if you were made 30,000 or less. I wouldn't care if you had to not make money for 3 years in the hopes that eventually the business would take off and you'd make a little more, if it makes you as happy as this has made you.
Wow.
Because you found meaning and you found purpose and you're excited about it and you want to talk about it over dinner. You want to be reading, you want to wake up in the middle of the night and check your email, right? Because you love it. You just love everything about it. And it's just insane to me, having lived it, where you show up when you're on the way to work on a Monday morning or any day of the week and you're just dreading it. Just how you could live that way. And for what? Because you need money. You can't make I made some major sacrifices in my life. I told you earlier, I quit my job to go and live in a mobile home, and I was thrilled. And a funny detail I left out of the story I told earlier about how I was about to get on a train, and my business partner Ian had the moment where he went, oh no, I'm not making any money. I'm living at Ryan's parents' house in his old bedroom. Meanwhile, I was going to make $70,000-$80,000 a year at a big bank. When we talked on the phone, because we talk on the phone every morning and every afternoon after work, just to catch up on the day and see how the business was going. He sounded so much happier than I did, even though I had more money coming in and I was more stable. He sounded so much happier and so much more fulfilled, even though he made something like $4,000 or something like that in 9 months. And I was making closer to 100 a year. He was so much happier. And when I finally quit, I remember when I quit my big banking job to go and pay myself pennies to live in a mobile home park. I remember as soon as I quit, and as soon as I knew everything was going to be okay, which is right when I quit, just when I knew I didn't have to show up to work the next day, I rode a high that I have not felt vocationally ever. And that liberation and that freedom all comes from not feeling stuck anymore and feeling like I found what I meant to do when I grow up. And like I said to my wife, even if it doesn't pay you for a couple of years, we can go out to eat less. We can not go buy the fancy new car. We can downgrade the home we're living in. We can find ways to cut costs. But like, if you wake up before the sun, if you leave your home before the sun comes up and get home after the sun goes down, and you truly just hate what you do, those are years of your life you can never get back. And in exchange for what? For money? For things that don't truly make you happy?
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder whether, maybe we ask students the wrong question, because
yeah, I agree.
We ask them how they're going to make money with that when they tell you they want to be an artist or something. Well, maybe we should be asking, how will you make yourself happy?
Yeah. I agree, because at least the United States, the big thing guidance counselors tell you is get good grades so you can get into a good college, so you can get a good job. And I remember I told my parents I wanted to be a psychology major, and I told it to them with the caveat that I was going to use it to get into sales. Because I remember when I told my mom that, she went, well, that's lovely. What are you going to do with a degree in psychology? I just think that's the wrong message. I agree with you. I think it should start early, and when they're young, and you should ask them who they are and what truly makes them happy. And the funny thing of it is, so my brother's a photographer, and there's not a lot of lucrative photography jobs out there, but that's what he does, and that's what he's always wanted to do. And even when he's making next to no money and sleeping on couches, he has a reason to get up every day. And even if he never makes a whole lot of money, at least he knows what he wants to be when he grows up, and he can find happiness in that.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a good place to end. Other than, what one tip would you give the listener based on your life story? What would you leave with us?
Best tip that I haven't mentioned, because there's a lot of things I would love to mention here, but the marathon runner beats the sprinter every time. So I'm self-taught fluent in Spanish. And if you were to ask me why, it's because without fail, I practice Spanish for 15 minutes every single day. And in the short run, you might go spend a bunch of money on what is that, Rosetta Stone or classes or tutors. But if you stop in 3 months versus little Rryan just doing 15 minutes every day for years and years and years, it compounds. So whether it's starting your business or losing weight or whatever it is, if you can just find a way to do a little bit every day, a little bit every day goes a long way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So, Ryan, would you come back on another day to discuss something else?
I would love it. And my wife, by the way, she overheard our pre-record conversation, and she's pretty excited to talk to you as well. So we might have to do a couples interview.
Oh, that sounds quite interesting. I might take you up on that for sure. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Ryan as much as I enjoyed having it. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. And finally, if you would like to work with us or just interested in finding out more about the Maverick at work, check out our website maverickparadox.co.uk.